For the longest time, our way of dealing with pests that threaten our food has been pretty simple. Just wage war. But what if that constant battle was a fight we were actually destined to lose? We're about to dive into a radical shift in thinking, moving from brute force to brain power, and uncovering a much smarter way to protect our planet's food supply. And that, right there, is the big question driving a whole revolution in agriculture. It's all about shifting away from just trying to wipe pests out and moving toward finding a delicate balance, a way to manage them that keeps our farms going and sustains the very environment they need to survive.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the story of a supposed wonder weapon, the chemical pesticide, and see why it turned into a double-edged sword. Then we'll get into a much smarter strategy called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, and check out its really clever toolbox. And finally, we'll zoom way out to see how these exact same ideas are absolutely crucial for protecting the whole planet through something called biosecurity.
Okay, so to really get where we're going, we've got to first understand where we've been. Our story kicks off right after World War II with the arrival of these powerful new chemical weapons, not for the battlefield, but for the farm field.
So the 1940s kicked off this massive boom in synthetic pesticides like DDT, and at first, they seemed like an absolute miracle. But then, in 1962, a book came out that changed everything. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring blew the lid off the dark side, the awful impact on wildlife. This public outcry was a huge turning point, leading to this new idea called IPM in '69, and just a few years later, the ban of DDT in the United States.
But there was another, sneakier problem bubbling up under the surface. It's basically evolution on hyperdrive. See, when you spray a field, you kill off most of the pests, but there are always a few that are just naturally resistant. And guess what? They're the ones that survive and have babies, creating a whole new generation that's way tougher to kill. It's a chemical arms race we just can't win.
And this is not some rare thing. Today, we're talking about more than 500 species of insects and mites that have become resistant to the very chemicals designed to get rid of them. That number is like a giant flashing red light telling us our old strategy just isn't working. So if more chemicals isn't the answer, what is? Well, this brings us to the alternative, Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. And this is a fundamental shift in how we think. It's about moving from waging war on pests to intelligently managing the entire farm ecosystem.
So what is IPM exactly? Well, think of it as a whole system approach. Instead of just reacting to a pest problem with a can of spray, IPM is all about preventing problems from starting by building a healthier, more resilient farm. Now, pesticides aren't completely off the table, but they're a tool of last resort, not your first and only move.
This slide really puts the two mindsets right next to each other. Over on the left, you've got the old way, a war, trying to eradicate everything, with chemicals as your main weapon. But on the right is the IPM approach, which is more like being a really clever manager. The goal isn't to kill every single bug. It's to keep their numbers low enough that they don't cause real economic damage. And your most important tool, it's not a spray bottle, it's your brain.
Okay, so if knowledge is the main tool, what does it actually look like out in the field? Let's go ahead and open up the IPM toolbox and see what a modern farmer is working with.
I really love this diagram because it shows the two different roads a farm can go down. The top path, that's your IPM practices, things like diversifying habitats. These build up the farm's own natural defenses, encouraging the good bugs that eat the pests. The bottom path shows the conventional stuff, like planting just one crop, which actually makes the farm weaker and more vulnerable. The entire point of IPM is to push the whole system up toward that top path.
The whole IPM process is just really logical. It all starts with prevention, basically making the farm a place pests don't really want to be in the first place. Next up is constant observation. You're out there scouting the fields, counting pests and their natural enemies. And only then, if the pest numbers cross a certain line where they're going to cause financial damage, does the farmer finally intervene.
And here's the thing, intervention doesn't just mean spraying. The IPM toolbox has so much more in it. You've got cultural controls, which can be as simple as changing when you plant your seeds. There are mechanical controls, like setting physical traps. You've got biological controls, which is all about letting the good bugs eat the bad bugs. And only after you've tried all of that do you even think about using the most targeted, least harmful chemical you can find.
And this, right here, is the key. IPM empowers farmers to become scientists on their own land.
Through this deep analysis of their farm's ecosystem, they learn to watch everything, track the whole complex web of life, and then make their own smart decisions. It's a huge shift from just following instructions on a chemical bottle to becoming a real ecosystem expert.
All right, let's zoom out. Because these ideas about managing a complex system, they don't just apply to one farm. They apply to our whole interconnected planet. And this brings us to this super important idea of global biosecurity. So, let me tell you a story. It's a classic and pretty devastating cautionary tale. Back in the 19th century, Europe's incredible wine industry was almost completely wiped out. And not by just one disaster, but by a whole chain reaction of them, all set off by the simple act of moving some plants across the ocean.
So just follow this chain of events. First, powdery mildew shows up and starts wrecking European grapes. The solution seems easy. Let's import some American vines that are resistant to it. But those vines had a hidden passenger, a tiny aphid called Phylloxera that just destroyed the European vines from the roots up. So what do? They import more American vines, this time ones resistant to Phylloxera. You'd think that'd solve it, right? Nope. Incredibly, those new vines brought 2 more diseases with them. Every single narrow solution created an even bigger problem.
So the really hard lesson that came out of that whole disaster is what we now call biosecurity. It's this big picture idea that says you can't just react to problems when they show up. You have to manage the risks of moving species around the world at every single stage, before, during, and after they cross a border.
And today, this stuff is more important than ever. I mean, think about it. With goods and people zipping around the planet faster than ever before, the risk of some new invasive pest causing a huge crisis, like another Irish potato famine, is scarily real. It's a global problem, and it absolutely demands a global, ecosystem-based way of thinking. You know, this quote just nails it. It doesn't matter if we're talking about one little farm or the entire planet. We're not dealing with a simple machine. We're part of a living, breathing system where every single action has a reaction somewhere else. Our solutions have to be just as connected as the problems we're trying to fix.
Which kind of leaves us with this one final massive question. We've seen how much knowledge and care it takes to manage just one farm like an ecosystem. So how in the world do we scale that wisdom up? How do we get millions of people, businesses, and governments to start thinking this way, to protect the one shared biosphere we all have? That really is the challenge of our time.